Hey guys, Desolator Magic here, and I wanted to make a video on this for quite some time, but it took a little research. And today I was reminded of it again, and I thought, let's just make the dang video with just one example. So if you've heard me kind of mention this in passing in other videos, it's usually a video about the absolute hypocrisy of wizards in their, hiring practices, how they treat contractors, how they treat distribution in other countries. And now we're moving on to how they treat the level of effort going into translating the Magic cards. They must have the worst translation contractors or company or third party or whatever ever. They must have just Googled like cheap Portuguese translator and then just hit enter and that one will take the first one, thanks. And I remember one set quite a while ago was exceptionally bad, so I double checked. It was indeed Eldritch Moon. So that came out roughly 4 years ago, I think, right around there. I know, I can't believe it's been that long. That's crazy. But I remember somebody had made a list, and I finally found it, of just the translation errors in just Spanish in just Eldritch Moon. You will not believe how many there are. And we're not talking like, oh, this is a more fitting word, like just blatant errors. I mean, even one of them was a formatting error on Degolladora Vampira, which I don't remember the English translation for. They forgot to put the flavor text in italics. So it is now part of the card's rules text. So now when you play this card, by rule, not all monsters have tentacles. So since it's not in italics, that is now an official game rule as soon as this hits play. I don't know how you would handle that. You might have to call a judge. I mean, it's just careless. The reminder text on the card is in italics, in parentheses. It's just like, oops, I forgot to check all the cards. Oops, I forgot to hit Control-I or whatever. Like, what the hell? So make a shout out to the person who compiled the bulleted list of just ones that they themselves caught in just this one set in just Spanish. De Morden. It might just be De Morden. I don't know. I don't know what language it's in. Well, I mean, they said they live in a Spanish-speaking country. Anyway, number 1, Repel the Abominable. Only prevents damage from non-human creatures instead of non-human sources. So they use the word for creature instead of source. Oops. I mean, that's a fairly common Magic phrase. That's not that unique. So that's pretty inexcusable. Well, the number 2 was, Vampire Cutthroat. That's what that one translates to. The flavor text is actually rules, because it's not in italics, so that's the one I pointed out. Then we got Hanweir Battlement and Hanweir Garrison have their names switched in the translation. How much effort did they not put into this? This is amazing. I mean, so literally, like, the one that's a picture of a building is now Garrison, and the one that has a bunch of troops on it is the Battlement. I mean, you're looking at the card art. Do the cards one at a time. I mean, how did they do this? It must have rushed through it or something. It's inexcusable. If you thought it couldn't get worse, the set name Eldritch Moon, which Eldritch is like Old English. It's kind of an obscure word. It just means eerie, weird, or spooky. So they translated it to Moon of Horrors, which they claim in Spanish sounds as tacky as spooky moon. It's not something that Spanish speakers would say. That's just not a way you would phrase it. According to them. You guys know I speak Spanish, just not, that well. Not enough to know if something that I have said myself is something that people would say correctly in culture. It's like one time my German friend said, wait 1 small second. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not something we say, but why don't we say that? That's awesome. Like, it sounds correct. It is correct. It's just not something we would say. So I guess that's what they're getting at with Moon of Horrors. Oh boy. I would have gone with El Spooptaculario, followed by #2 spoopy for me. I mean, you can't go wrong there. And the list ain't done. Summary Dismissal's translation is the title of a party song equivalent to the trashiest twerk BS. To cast it feels as stupid as saying, I raised my Miley Cyrus to your Emrakul. So, I mean, that one, I get it. You could be like living an American English speaker who's extremely fluent in Spanish doing these translations, and you wouldn't necessarily know the crappy, trashy hit pop songs. So, I mean, if you get a native Spanish speaker who learned really good fluent English, they might misinterpret what your card says and then translate it incorrectly because of that. And then if you get an English speaker who is extremely fluent in Spanish but doesn't actually live in a Spanish-speaking place, they might make mistakes like this and use words that are just awkward, not commonly used, phrases that look right but aren't, and stuff like that. So there's no good way to do it unless you get like a absolute top tier translator, where it's either basically a team of 2 people or somebody who like has lived in both places for like 5+ years. So I mean, I'll give them that one. It's not the end of the world, and it's not technically incorrect. It's just distasteful. I guess they took issue with the fact that the spell Give No Ground was just simply translated as You Shall Not Pass, Which, I mean, one is the famous Lord of the Rings quote, and two, not at all give no ground. But I hate to give them any kind of credit because clearly they don't know what the hell they're doing. But the translation company maybe knew that give no ground just was not a phrase that makes sense no matter how you translate it, because it's just not an idiom phrase that you would use in any Spanish-speaking country. So they had to choose something else, but just stealing something from Lord of the Rings, really? Then we've got the spell displace, which was translated as permutation or trade. So I guess they probably use like the scientific chemical term for it, or alchemical, equivalent exchange. Permutation, I think, just means changing a form. So they just literally wrote why and then question mark, and that's it. Just why? Why would you do this? Why would you choose that word? I mean, if you think about it, with that connotation, permutation or trade has nothing to do with the word displace. I think that they thought it was like a form of replace or something. I don't know. It's just not correct. I mean, first of all, the word desplaçar does exist, but maybe it means like a volume displacing another volume, and that's it. It doesn't mean like displace as in like disappear, vaporize, or whatever, or like move to another plane of existence, which I think is what the spell does. So they picked permutation or trade, which is, by the way, a noun, not even a verb, so that's pretty far off. Next up, we've got the card Gavany Unhallowed. It was translated to a grammatically incorrect statement. Now, this just screams the person doesn't actually speak Spanish, because nobody would get this wrong. Nobody. I wouldn't have even gotten this wrong, and my Spanish sucks. So in the context of the art and what's being displayed on the card, it's an unhallowed thing that is from Gavany. So Gavany is the adjective describing it. They translated it to Gavany is unholy, which is just a statement that's like a sentence. And the last one, which to reiterate is probably not the last one, it's just the last one that this person caught personally, is Olivia's Dragoon. For reference, what the heck is a Dragoon? I mean, we've seen them in, I think StarCraft 1 had some. It's a heavily armed guy on horseback in like medieval Europe. So it's like a description of a unit. It's like, this is an archer, this is a Dragoon, this is a infantryman, centurion, hoplite, whatever. Now, in the card artwork, it's an armored horse and an armored rider. This is not particularly difficult to figure out. So they translated it to, I bet you could guess, Olivia's Dragon. Because Dragoon, Dragon, what's the difference? It's close enough. One's a giant flying lizard that breathes fire and clearly is not what's depicted on the card, and the other one is a military unit from medieval Europe. What's the difference? And then everybody who apparently saw the card is like, so why isn't this subtype dragon? How does this not interact with any of my dragon spells, or what the hell? What'd they do here? I mean, bare minimum, they could have said Olivia's Caballeria, which is like horse unit. I heard of another drastic mistranslation, just careless, absolutely careless. It was in the Russian version of Cryptolith Fragment from the same set. Instead of saying at the beginning of your upkeep, it says at the beginning of each upkeep. That's a very basic common Magic the Gathering Russian word on Magic the Gathering Russian cards. It's very hard to screw this up unless you are giving zero effort whatsoever. So I'm getting different reports from different people. I've heard somebody say the Italian ones are almost never wrong. I've seen the Portuguese people say that the Portuguese translations are like a handful of errors per set. I know from personal experience, there's about one typo or significant error about one in every 4 sets in English, I'd say. But generally the sentiment I've heard from at least a dozen people who live in foreign countries is that a lot of the translations are careless, rushed, uninformed, clueless, and just unnecessary. Once in a while you get a funny localization thing, but typically it's just careless, bad, just they need to hire better translation contractors. It's really that simple. So the worst one I heard of lately was just somebody who must have been reformatting the card while translating it, which, why? And I believe it was the Triomes. No, it was Double Filters. It was one of those lands. It was real recent. I don't remember exactly where they were. Probably Last Master set or something. But in one of the countries, it was just wrong. The wrong color symbols were there, so it generated like the wrong mana. Or like filtered in and out the wrong ones or something. I don't know. You guys probably remember what that was. It was a couple months ago. I just don't remember exactly what it was and couldn't find it through searching. But yeah, when you start just showing the wrong mana symbols, that's pretty bad. That's not even careless translation. That's just careless work, like graphics work. Everything's rushed, no proofreading. I mean, that's just a sign of a translation company, aka a localization contractor, that doesn't know what the hell they're doing and doesn't care and rushes everything. which sounds kind of like how Wizards operates lately, so I'm not surprised that's who they'd go with to save, a couple $100. I mean, I know everybody says localization teams and translations and stuff, they aren't cheap, but as a percentage of the sales, they are cheap. It's just Magic is big enough that they could afford to pay for quality translators if they gave enough of a crap. But they don't. Which brings me back to the whole, diversity, everyone's important, every culture, whatever, all that stuff they're always spouting off nonstop. And then their hiring practices are super racist, apparently. Their firing practices and how they treat their employees is allegedly, according to at least 3 people, incredibly racist. Apparently they're quite sexist as well. We've got multiple people who used to work there alleging that it was a hostile work environment at Wizards of the Coast. I believe they've been accused at least once of age discrimination. Don't get me started on the list of accusations of veteran status, political or disability or religious belief discrimination, because that would be a 1-hour documentary. And Wizards of the Coast is basically from Seattle. It's like Renton or something, but it's Seattle, let's be honest. And that whole area is kind of known for being very hypocritical about, saying one thing and doing the other, as far as discrimination and diversity goes. So can I just say this is some accounting, bean counter, whatever, I'm sure they're all as good as each other, or, this translation company said they're really good and then turned out they weren't, and whatever, who else can we find? Going through like one per year and they're all bad. I mean, could I write it off as that? Yeah. Do I think it's because they just don't give enough of a crap and they're just like, this country is nothing to us? This language, it's 1% of our sales. Who cares? Just why would we spend, $10,000 when we could spend $5,000? And honestly, it's probably cheaper than that. I mean, it's only like 250 cards, like for one project, just to look through 250 cards, each that have like 1 or 2 sentences on them, and just do some basic research. It's probably a couple grand. I mean, if they're paying more than that, they're getting ripped off, especially given the quality, the output quality. So, I mean, maybe they went with a different translator because, whatever, some reason one went out of business, or they thought they could save money, or one was more expensive. They thought they'd be better and they weren't. They were just more expensive. And then it was really bad for Eldritch Moon. And then they went with a different company after that. Well, that would be true if these people weren't claiming there's absolutely consistent, ongoing, long-term translation errors and they're all really lazy and clueless. It sounds like they're just going with the same, rush it, here, I'll get it done for $500, who cares company. And they just don't care that there's errors in it. I mean, if they did care that there was errors in it, they would fix it because they hear about it nonstop on social media. And maybe people just don't bring it up enough. I don't know. Who knows? It's possible they aren't aware of it, but it's it's the type of thing where it's so sensitive and it's such a, we're the prestige #1, card game in the world. We're going to have 2 different translation companies do their versions of it, pay double, and then compare them, and maybe even have a 3rd expert compare which one is correct and which one's not, or which one's more correct. And then you get a very, very, very solid system. I mean, if it's important, that's basically what you do. Or you really, really look into it, or you just verify it for the first couple, and then once they prove that they're a company who actually gives a crap about quality, then you let them run free without verifying the work, but you do it up front to make sure it's right. 10, 20 years of not giving a crap, that's inexcusable in my opinion. So do I think it's just active those people are lesser than us because they're foreign and they're different, we don't care about them, just blatant conscious discrimination? Not really, but is it an incredibly bad look and not in line with their everyone's important, all cultures are important, diversity, yeehaw, stuff that they spout off on social media? No, it's not consistent with that at all from a result standpoint. So like I said, I don't think that they're just sitting back it's some backwater country, who cares about those people and their dirty garbage country, there's some errors, whatever, translating is hard, get over it. I don't think that's being said in a meeting, but this has been brought up to them multiple times that I've seen, and they just ignored it and did nothing to fix it, as far as I know. So if you have any more funny translation errors, I guess funny in a dark way, because these should not be happening, and I think it's honestly at the end of the day kind of disrespectful. But any of your favorite translation errors that you've personally seen, leave them down in the comment section below, and we can all continue to laugh at them. And hopefully Wizards will do something about it eventually, but it's been so long, I think it's pretty clear they're not going to. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you guys next video.